So today I'll be talking about how do we use AI in coupling process models with experimental data called MOdEX. And how do I use the point? Okay. So the focusing on watershed modeling as well as much more advanced subsurface process models. So first, I would like to thank the funding resource from the DOE, BER, and LDRD, and supercomputing resources which use this research, and my collaborators at PNNL and universities. So the primary theme in MOdEX is that you have a site data and a conceptual model that represents a site data, and how we use AI to combine this site data that you have collected with the process models. So we illustrate that with two different scenarios. One is for the watershed model, where it is not expensive to generate that data, and a second case where in which using a DOE simulator called pFloatran, as Professor Rajram mentioned, which is much more computationally intensive and useful to calibrate that. So the workflow that I have described is in these two papers, along with the code and the scripts. So if you want to test this, I would be very interested in that. And if you want to use it for your own data, I'd also be very interested in helping you out on that. And what I'll be showing here is on the supercomputing resource, but we have tested it on the laptop to cluster to leadership class computing systems. So why machine learning and why we need that for MOdEX? So the primary aspect is typical process models, such as watersheds. Here we use a SWOT model that represents a watershed processes, can have high dimensional parameters, which can be empirical as well as process models. By high dimensional, we mean like anything more than 10. And we want to calibrate such processes and empirical parameters using data, for instance, here the stream flow data for watersheds, in an efficient way and with a reasonably accurate way. So, and the hypothesis that we have is that this can be done efficiently with recent advances in deep learning, for instance, deep neural networks and convolution neural networks combined with supercomputing resource. This is the most important one. And why we believe that this is going to work is because, like from the previous literature, deep learning shows promise in estimating high dimensional parameters, which are typical to process model based inversion. And it can allow us to help nonlinear relationships that relate the stream flow with the associated process model parameters. So the test bed we have is an American River watershed within the Yakima River Basin. So we have this Yakima River Basin here. We selected this watershed site because we have a stream gauge that measures this the stream flow for this watershed. So we have for this watershed, we have the various input data sets, and we have the corresponding SWOT model. For this model, we have the first step in any ML-based training is generating data. So using the SWOT watershed model, we generated data, and using a Sobol sequence of the parameters, and using this ensemble data, we train our ML models and use that ML models, trained ML models on the observational data to estimate the parameters and run the watershed model again. And then we do is we calibrate this model based on the stream flow data and validate whatever we have calibrated for the data that is unseen by this model. So this is how the data looks like along with the SWOT ensembles. So the gray lines represent the SWOT ensembles. The brown line, the brown dashed line represents the mean of the ensembles. The black line represents the observational data. As you can see, much of the data is encapsulated within this observational data, because that is most important for deep learning, because deep learning doesn't do good if it is extrapolated beyond its training regime. So first thing is we ensure that the SWOT data is contained within the observational data. So the second step is the workflow. So how do we construct this AI-enabled MOdEX workflow? So you have this SWOT ensemble discharge. So what we do is the first step is pre-processing. among the various preprocessors. We preprocess the data such that it is standardized between 0 to 1, because the exact values is not the exact values is not a good way to train ML model. And once we standardize that, we give that to a deep neural network and then estimate the SWOT parameters. We do this at scale. By scale means that we distribute this on a supercomputer on each and every processors and train these models efficiently. You can do that on your laptop with the 4 cores you have, but it is going to take some time. Here, we do that on a leadership class computing. Why we want to do that at scale is because the AI model training is time consuming and expensive, and we need to tune hyperparameters for these models. So that's the reason why we plan to do it at scale. And the other advantage by doing this at scale is that it is embarrassingly parallel. So you can train each and every model on either a CPU or a GPU, and you can use advanced grid search methods or Bayesian optimization methods that are scalable to do this. So how do we do that? So we place each and every model on a core and bind these models for each and every core and estimate these SWOTs, estimate these process model parameters. So once we have trained these models, we test it and we validate it. Now what we do? So we have this trained model, we ingest the observational data here and estimate the SWOT parameters, the watershed model parameters, and run the watershed model on this AI estimated parameters and compare with the discharge. And we also assess the model performance using various metrics such as mean square error, R2 score, and various other performance metrics here. So summarizing, okay, everything is good. Now, how do your ML model results compare, ML model calibration results compare with the observational data? So the top row shows the calibration period. The solid, the dashed blue line represents the best calibrated model, and you can see a slight light blue color. Those are the other next best models. It does really well with the black line, which is observed data, both in the calibration period, which is a 3-year period, and the validation period, which is a 10-year period, which is not even seen by this ML model. So this instills confidence in that AI-enabled MOdEX approach gives us a better way to estimate watershed model parameters in a nice and efficient way. Okay, this all is good. Now, how does this AI-enabled methodology compare with the existing parameter, like existing calibration parameters or inverse modeling algorithms? So what I'm showing here is a comparison of the deep neural network, which is a CNN, with the state-of-the-art DDS method, that is a global optimization parameter estimation method, and another global optimization parameter called GLUE, which are both available in advanced optimization software tools such as Dakota and PEST. So across all the metrics, what it shows is the green one, which is the deep neural network, outperforms both the existing state of the art, not only for calibration period, but also for the validation period. So this instills confidence in that the ML method performs better than existing methods, and we can use in our MOdEX workflows for calibrating high dimensional parameters. So well and good, this is for watershed, where in which generating data is not computationally that much expensive using SWOT. So how do you do this for when data generation is expensive? So that is the second part. So calibrating subsurface process models such as pfloatran in a nice and efficient way when limited simulation data is available. So that's a primary question. How do we estimate 3D subsurface permeability, which is the most important one, and which is high dimensional? By high dimensional, we mean we want to estimate permeability in each and every grid cell, and with efficient and with reasonably good accuracy. So we can do that by adding one more step. So we want to reduce this high dimensional parameter space into low dimensional parameter space using dimensionality reduction. So here what we'll show using is a PCA analysis, and the same can be done with advanced methods such as variational autoencoders, which allows us to extract hidden variables and then combine the deep learning and supercomputing resource. So this is our model domain. So we chose a Hanford site in the Washington state because we have considerable data available for this site at various time snapshots. So we have a model domain, which is which is here, and this is a bigger bounding box, which is of 400 meters by 400 meters. And we have a set of surface electrodes, wherein which we measure the resistance between two set of electrodes to better understand permeability in a non-invasive way and in this bigger domain. And the focus is understanding how the river water intrudes into this system and how the changes in the river water is seen through these electrodes. So the focus is on this in the subsurface between 90 meters to 110 meters, where there is a change in the groundwater table. And we want to understand how the river water displaces the groundwater and intrudes into this domain. So the main components of this conceptual model is a permeability, heterogeneous permeability. So we assimilated the tracer data as well as the flow data to estimate a set of realizations for permeability based on which ML model is trained. So we have this 3D permeability field with a grid size of 0.5 meters by 0.5 meters. And we have from the LiDAR data, we have information on the surface and the regions of interest where permeability estimation is most important. So the domain size, for this domain size, we have approximately 1,600 cells in which we need to estimate permeability that is too high dimensional and not feasible with any approach, even if you use ML in a brute force way. So and we have generated 302 unique realizations in which like more than 80% are used for training and 10 for validation, 10 for testing. So how does, like, before doing any ML, how does your data compare with the simulation data? So the top figure shows the blue one is the simulation data, and the black one is observational data. So as the collected data is correlated with the signatures from the simulation data, we have to do a normalization and detrending it. In that way, we can make sure that the data is contained within this simulation region. So the bottom part shows how the data is how the simulation data is contained within how the observational data is contained within the simulation data, and this instills confidence that the observational data is contained within the simulation data to train ML models. So how much is the observational data that we have collected? So for every 6 hours, we collect these measurements, and we collect more than 40,000 measurements for a time snapshot of 28 days. So that results in more than 1 million measurements to understand this problem and estimate the permeability. So the typical MOdEX flow, you have an input, which is the electrical flow data. We want to reduce this we want to encode this because it's a 5 dimension. We use a PCA to do that. And we do the same thing for the permeability. So we develop a deep neural network that connects the electrical potential data to the permeability. And once we train this network, we decode it and run the simulations again. So how much can you reduce the dimension with? So with 1 million data points for the electrical field, you can generate 270 principal components. And with 1 million cells, you remove the cells in which you know the permeability the most. And after that, we have more than 500,000 cells from which we have 246 permeability components. So this shows how the explained variance varies, and we encapsulated more than 99% of the 99% of the variance in the data in these principal components. So how does the PCA training looks like? So the PCA training looks reasonably well. So you can see the training, validation, testing, one-to-one plots. Each dot represents a permeability in each and every cell. So it is scattered around the one-to-one plots, and the percent error in each and every cell is less than 10%. So that's reasonably okay. So now, building on that, we have trained. Oh, cut off there. Okay, that's fine. So these are the training, validation, and testing results from the deep learning model after you estimate the principal components. So the top row shows the ground truth at a slice at a certain depth, which is of interest. And the bottom row shows the deep learning predictions. So as you can see in the training, it does reasonably well. And the validation and testing, there are some changes here, and the percent error is less than 10%. But still, there are certain differences in estimation of high permeability zones. So this instills a reasonable confidence in using deep learning to train these models. So before we plan to do a calibration, we saw that there is certain overfitting in the system. So we want to overcome that. So before that, I'll show you what we are currently doing. But so far, we see that AI-enabled MOdEX workflow provides a way to calibrate process models. And one of the things is generating additional simulation data, and how we do that in a nice way is the most important one. So what I want to show is the new capabilities that we are trying to develop. So how does a river water intrude into the system? These black lines are the electrodes. And as the river water introduces a system, you can see there's a change in the polarity, and that is captured in these two set of measurements. And pFloater does a really good job in capturing such phenomena. And this new capability is developed as a part of the DRD Agile program Insight. And so on this new capability, we perform scalability studies on the DOE supercomputing machine called ALCF. And pFloater does really well and scales very well till more than 250,000 cores. And the first set of preliminary results using this DL approach shows promise, in which we can see that the black line, like the simulated data, follows a really good trend with respect to the black line. So this instills confidence in further training our ML models to calibrate the system well. So with that, I would like to thank you and for questions.
Thank you, Maruti. So maybe one question.
So CNN allows us to better extract abstract features from the data. So it's like similar to an image in which you can extract certain parts of a face, for example, eye, and differentiate that with the nose. So CNN does that better than DNN, and we showed that DNN provides a much lesser confidence than CNN for these set of problems.
Okay, thank you.